I signed up for. I've signed up for like the majority of my days being devoted to doing something that I really don't enjoy. By the time you do like 2 years of 80-hour weeks where you're doing things that are not feeding you, you get a little bit tired. If I'm happy and healthy, I can put that back into the world, right? Versus just being in survival mode all the time.
Welcome to Vet Life Reimagined, where we are exploring diverse veterinary journeys and seeking wisdom for a thriving vet life. The episode I have for you today, I'm excited to share because it is a story of the ultimate terrifying moment when you realize that you are not where you want to be in your career and you are elbow deep. What do you do? Dr. Samantha Vitale was in the middle of a neurology residency and had to deal with the realization that she needed to change the career identity that she had created in her mind. This is not easy. She walks us through the journey and how she has found a place where she is thriving and loving the veterinary profession. Samantha is now connecting the profession, veterinary specialists, and general practitioners on a teleconsulting platform called Stratocyte. When we are connected and working together as a profession, that's when we can achieve the ultimate access to targeted patient care. So let's get to the conversation with Dr. Samantha Vitale. And how I really like to start these conversations is really going back and reflecting back on, when did you even know you wanted to get into veterinary medicine?
I actually can't remember when I first wanted to be a vet. At some point when I was a young child, I guess I found out what a veterinarian was and then immediately decided that I was going to devote my entire life to becoming a veterinarian. And I did. So yeah, at some point, probably elementary school, I learned about it and just kind of went for it and kind of tried to take every step I could along the process to kind of prepare myself to be a veterinarian. Like I grew up riding horses. The day that I turned 16, I went to the vet clinic where my dog went to the vet and said like, okay, I'm legally old enough to work here now. If you don't have a job, I'll work for free in the kennel until a position comes open. Like I'm ready to work. And he was like, okay. So yeah, just straight from the start, kind of went at it full force.
I can relate on most of those points. I rode horses. I wasn't quite 16 when I started, but definitely very eager and trying to find all the ways to make this dream happen. So I do get that. And you may be my first Mississippi graduate. And you're what I call like a lifer. So you went undergrad and vet school. Is that right?
Yeah, so I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and someone that I worked with at the vet clinic that I grew up working at had mentioned to me that Mississippi State had an early entry program, which I hadn't heard of previously. So, since I'd been working in the school since age 6, I decided why not? Might as well apply for this. So I did. And I was actually lucky enough to get accepted to the early entry program for Mississippi State. So I did go to undergrad there. Then after 3 years, just went straight into vet school. And I was a city girl at the time. Like my whole family's from New York. Like I had planned to move to the Northeast. I thought I was just going to like move to Manhattan and never look back. And I ended up going to like the most rural place imaginable. And I loved it. I was like, this is where my soul is. Like, these are my people. I loved it. I love Mississippi. Best 7 years of my life. Like great experience.
Oh, I love that too, because you never know until you try something sometimes. So
Yeah.
what a great story to to kind of show that. You talked about you volunteered at veterinary clinics. You knew you wanted to go into veterinary medicine for a long time. You had your school picked out. You're all good, ready to go. Did you have an idea of like how you would practice veterinary medicine going in? Did that change at all? Like, what was that kind of journey?
Yeah, I guess I always just assumed I would do clinical medicine because that's when you're younger, that's what being a vet is to you. And when I worked at, the small animal practice growing up, I loved it. Like I loved every second of it. I loved it so much. I would work a 12-hour shift. I would stay late like until the very last minute, until the owner of the practice was like, no, we're leaving now. We're done for the day. And by the time I was driving home, I was already ready for the next day. Like I was so disappointed to be leaving. And I just absolutely loved every second of it. And So I probably planned on going into small animal practice in some capacity. I think I always knew that I wanted to specialize. I don't know why, I just really love school and I just wanted to just really delve into something, but I didn't know what I wanted to specialize in. I really liked rehab, and so I was sort of thinking about maybe doing orthopedic surgery with a rehab focus or something. I don't think I knew what neurology really was at the time, but yeah, I think I was going to go into small animal clinical practice in some capacity.
And so when did you start to think about like what that specialty might be?
When I was initially starting vet school, I remember, I think it was maybe like second semester, freshman year, we had to take neuroscience and I was dreading it because I heard it was very hard and I thought I was going to get a bad grade and I wasn't going to understand it. And I accidentally loved it. Studying for neuroscience was like the highlight of my day. I loved every second of it. I loved memorizing the neuroanatomic pathways. Still don't understand why first year vet students need to know those, but I loved learning them. It was just my jam. So I started to do a little bit of neuroscience research and kind of started becoming the neurology service groupie. And I would like follow them around and like hang out in the rehab room. And it just sort of happened that like, oh, Samantha's the neuro girl. And I just ended up accidentally falling into the role of the student that loved neurology. So.
I think that is beautiful, right? Again, back to the you never know until you try something, and it ended up, fitting a lot of what your enthusiasm, right?
Yeah, so I went through the match my fourth year. I matched at the University of Georgia, which I was really excited about because they have an awesome neurology program. Simon Platt, Mark Kent, and Allison Haley were there at the time, and I had gotten to work with them a lot during my externships, and so I really loved that program. I was very excited to be there. And so I just went in full steam ahead, was like so excited. Like I'm the veterinarian now. Like I am going to feel the same way I felt as a 16-year-old working late at the vet clinic. Like every single moment is going to be a gift and a joy. And I'm going to be like the happiest person on earth. And then after like my second ER shift overnight as an intern, I was like, oh, okay. So this is what's happening. Okay. Maybe, pump the brakes a little bit. There's a little bit more to this than what we had initially thought. But I definitely still spent a lot of time with the neuro folks, and really enjoyed my time there.
Yeah. And then where did you do your residency?
Illinois.
Illinois. Okay, so you're moving through the South here and moving up to the Midwest.
Yes, made it to
So
the Midwest.
yeah.
Wasn't planning to move to the Midwest either. Just a lot of geographical choices did not work out the way I thought they would, but turns out I love the Midwest. So um, I did a specialty internship at the University of Illinois, which was a really great experience because there had not been a house officer at U of I in neurology in like some ridiculous amount of time. I think it was like 30 or 40 years. So the neurology program had shut down for a while. My mentor had restarted the program. She's doing a great job as faculty, but she's running the service entirely by herself. So she was very excited to have me and I was excited to be there. So I got a lot of experience that year since I was the only house officer and was, basically running all the cases on the service, and then went right into a 3-year residency. Yeah. So that's my story.
Yeah. When I became a resident for 1 year, I was the only resident in nutrition. I kind of think it was a little bit of a blessing because it was a little bit of a push. Okay, it's my job. I got to go get us some clients. And especially when I started, there were actually a good number of people who didn't even know there was a nutrition service. So I really had to kind of work to build relationships because as a specialist, you have to work with people. They are going to refer to you and all of those things. So I think that was a really cool point in my career of finding who I was and learn my strengths as I was developing a career at the same time. So I don't know if you can relate, but did you kind of start to learn something about yourself, or was there just something that you kind of remember reflecting back to your residency? It was kind of like maybe a moment for you as you were about to continue your career.
the whole experience, like, even though it was a really long amount of time, like, looking back, it was such a blur, and I remember so little of it. A lot of it, you're in like sleep deprivation survival mode. But I think I learned a lot about what I am capable of, in terms of just getting through a lot of very challenging situations and being able to do that, with a good attitude and, not bringing others down with you. So I definitely think I learned a lot about my resiliency in that time.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good point, is not only are you under a lot of pressure with not having probably the best sleep schedule, or and you talked about being the only one, so you had a huge caseload because it was all you. Back to that, it's up to me to run a lot of that. What I caught on there is your awareness of how your attitude also impacts other people and how you can influence people. So I think that's super important, even though we may be in positions where we might be the main person on a service. We're just in a type of role where we're always working with people.
Yeah, your clients, and also being in academia, we
Hmm.
had students, most of the time
Yeah.
with us. And that was my absolute favorite thing about my residency. I loved working with the students. I loved teaching. I loved doing rounds. And so I really, I think, kind of latched onto that as my joy and my purpose and my passion for what I was doing. And maybe the cases weren't going well, or I was stressed about how my patients were doing, or, wasn't excited about having to, tell a client something didn't go well. But I would just kind of latch on to the opportunity to teach a subject that I love to talk about, and to kind of help the students stay positive and have that love for medicine. So I loved teaching.
Kind of interesting. Did you ever, because I'm sure, I mean, neurology, I'm trying to think, I'm pretty sure it was a required rotation when I went through. And so did you have a lot of students who kind of had maybe that preconceived notion that, oh my goodness, neurology is hard. I just want to survive this rotation. And if you did, like, what were some of your biggest tips you gave students coming through?
Well, neurology was an elective,
Okay, it was
at
elective.
Illinois, which pretty sure it still is, which is sad because it's extremely important. So we would get kind of like two groups of students. We get the students that loved it and like took it because they like were into it, and then we get the students that were terrified and took it because they wanted to better themselves, which is good, right? Like, you should
Challenge.
take the classes where you need to learn the most. But yes, a lot of people were terrified of it. And we just tried to make it fun. I mean, it's so important, and in some ways can be really rewarding, with your back dogs that are doing well. So there's no reason to be afraid of it. Just a body system like everything else.
Yeah, I love that. You finish your residency, it's a blur. And you get out, you're officially a neurologist. So what happens next? What happens for you?
Well, about midway through my residency, I realized that I was not going to be a clinical neurologist forever, hopefully not for very long. And I also, during my residency had my wheels just kind of started turning, because so far, like, on my little journey through all the parts of the US I never planned to live in but actually loved, I lived in Mississippi, which is a very rural state, right? And then I moved to Illinois, which is actually very rural as well. And so we're in the University of Illinois is in Champaign-Urbana, which is in the center of the state, and 3 hours north of us is Chicago, but there's really nothing else around us. And so we would get referrals from all over the Midwest, people driving hours to see us. I had this one patient who came from 3 hours south of us in, rural Southern Illinois, super nice older couple. They were in their late 80s. They were driving 3 hours to come see us with this sweet little dog that they loved so much. And they had a lot of health issues, couldn't really see very well, or it was very risky for them to drive that far. And that was something that kind of just made me realize, I think that I know I don't want to do full-time, just go into private practice and cut backs all day. I know that's not the best thing for me. I think that I can find a way to kind of bring neurology to these underserved communities and kind of help get specialty care to more rural areas. So I started kind of brainstorming some different business models of ways that I could do that. And I eventually settled on Stratocyte and worked on building that with my friend and co-founder, who's an anesthesiologist. And so basically by the time I got to the end of my residency, we kind of had this idea. We were ready to kind of like put it into place. You know, I met my husband doing my residency, thank God, because I would have starved to death if it wasn't for him. He like totally kept me alive during my residency. And so, you know, he had, you know, a house here and a job that he liked, and we had this great life that we had built, but I had never gotten to live it, right? Like I had only gotten to like live it on weekends that I wasn't on call. And I had said, you know, like I kind of like this life and I don't want to just uproot it and we move somewhere else for my job. Like I kind of want to have the experience of being able to live this life that I'm on the periphery of. Can I figure out a way to do that? He's like, yeah, absolutely. So I locumed for a couple of years and started kind of building this business. And so it's been a really great fit.
Because I think this is really important for people to understand and know that this is not only okay, but it is good. Is that you were going through your residency and you start to realize that maybe the full-time clinical neurology, type that maybe you originally thought that was kind of where you're heading is maybe not what was right for you. So do you mind speaking a little on that? Maybe some of the things that you started to see where you're starting to kind of rethink the path that you're creating for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I think the thing that attracted me most about neurology, besides how much fun it was for me for some reason to memorize the pathways, which I loved studying for boards, is the only section I enjoyed studying for. But the thing I loved the most was how during vet school, you get involved with these cases of these back dogs. We had this like terrible spinal trauma case where I had that case for 6 weeks and dog was like plegic in all 4 limbs, and we eventually got her to walk again. And it was just this like amazing hero story, right? And I think I just kind of got wrapped up in that of like, I'm going to do these back surgeries. These dogs are going to walk again. I'm going to be a hero, and every case is going to have a good outcome. It's just going to be like sunshine and roses. But in order to get to like the sunshine and roses, happy, wonderful cases, you have to do the neurosurgery. Never at any point did I stop and think to myself, hey, Samantha, is neurosurgery something that you would enjoy and that you think you have the skill set to do like successfully and frequently without like, is this something that like the gifts that you've been given are going to line up well for? Because to be very honest, I hate doing neurosurgery. I find it very tedious. I find it very stressful. I don't like the fact that for a several-hour period, if anyone in the room sneezes, that there could be catastrophic, results for my patient. I'm not good at using power tools, nor am I good at doing like really tiny, intricate things. My eyes are very different. Like I see well with my contacts, but because my prescription is so different in both eyes, it's very hard for me to focus on really small things. I was not designed to do neurosurgery. And so when I realized that, I was like, what have I signed up for? I've signed up for like the majority of my days being devoted to doing something that I really don't enjoy. And that takes me like a lot of stress and work to do well. So I was like, all right, we got to figure out a way like, okay, maybe I'll just do medical neurology. Like there's no shame in just doing medical neurology. I love internal medicine anyway. Like I will be a fabulous medical neurologist. And I do think that I am a pretty good medical neurologist, and I do enjoy it. I love having clients and working with them and like managing, these long-term seizures and autoimmune disorders and things like that. I do really enjoy working with clients. I had a lot of clients that, I've really loved helping, but there's also not a lot of crossing something off your to-do list, right? Like when you've got all of your cases are these very long-term medical management, chronic, challenging cases where there's no cure, it gets a little wearisome. My personality, I'm really, really motivated, and my reward, I guess, is in task accomplishment and solving problems, right? And so I've like basically got all these unsolvable problems all day, and I'm like, this is not as rewarding as I thought it was going to be, right? And so just kind of that combination of factors of kind of learning about myself and my personality type and like what I needed to feed my soul and keep me engaged and keep me happy and healthy in the profession was not what I was doing on a daily basis. And so by the time you do like 2 years of 80-hour weeks where you're doing things that are not feeding you, you get a little bit tired. And it just kind of got to the point where it was like, I've kind of exhausted my life's threshold of like, doing all of these things that just really aren't feeding me. So I now have this skill set. I now have this knowledge base. I want to continue to use it, but I want to do it in a way that's going to be good for me as a veterinarian and as a human, because if I'm happy and healthy, I can put that back into the world, right? Versus just being in survival mode all the time. And so I think, a lot of that was hard to adjust to because you feel like, well, first of all, I put all this time and effort into it. I took a residency spot, my parents supported me, my, partner supported me, like all these people were rallying behind me becoming a neurologist and a neurosurgeon, and I did it, but now I'm going to quit. And I think you have to kind of if you're in that position and you've gotten to a point in your career where you've put everything you have into becoming one thing, I think you kind of have to give yourself the grace to look at it from the same perspective that you would look at any other aspect in your life, right? Like if you're in a relationship with a person and it seems like it's going great initially and you put a lot into that, and then all of a sudden that relationship is causing you more harm than it is good, or causing you more sadness than it is happiness, and you try to reconcile that and you're not finding a way to do that, would anyone tell you to just suck it up and stick with it? No, right? Like you should find people in your life that feed you and build you up and bring you joy and make you happy. So why is it any different with a career or a hobby or anything? So just kind of giving yourself kind of the grace to say, okay, like I tried this. I learned a lot about myself in doing it. I now know how to create a role for myself that will be even better for the world around me. And I'm going to try to find a way to pursue that.
Oh, that is so important. So thank you for taking the time to share that. It's hard what you have created this identity in your mind, right? And so it
Right.
is not an easy thing to do, and I think you deserve that time to share that hard thing that you've gone through. And you've already started talking about some of these things that did light you up. The quicker instant gratifications, you like the teaching, you saw some needs around you that you were already kind of thinking about where you got put even geographically. And I think all of these you have the opportunity to live out so you can thrive through Stratocyte. So, do you mind going into more about what Stratocyte is, and then we can talk more about that?
Yes, of course. So Stratocyte is a virtual marketplace for veterinarians to exchange teleconsultations. So basically, we kind of modeled it after Etsy. We want to call it the Etsy for veterinary specialty care. And we basically just enable independent veterinary specialists to build their own virtual hospital. So you, for example, with nutrition, if you have a full-time job, but you are really passionate about consulting and you want to do some on the side, you can create a free account. You can build, the services that you want to offer. If you only want to talk about or consult on one specific niche of nutrition, you can do that. You build your own services, your own prices, your own schedule, and then primary care vets can find you and book those consults. It's free for them to join as well, and it just provides a resource that we're trying to help reduce the issues that are surrounded by the specialist shortage. And then, like I alluded to earlier, obviously geographical location is huge for pet owners that want the best care for their pet, but maybe don't have the means to go 3 hours away for a whole day event just to get a consult with a specialist.
Yeah. And so this is a vet to vet kind of platform. So general practice, reaching out to whatever specialist they need at the moment for whatever patient. Telehealth, teleconsulting has definitely been in the buzz, and because really that access to care, I think is only one part of it. But even like yourself, specialists who can start to build the type of career that does allow them to thrive and give back to the profession in the way that they do best. I think that's a really special aspect of this as well. All that to say that telehealth is still a concept that a lot of practices may either be hesitant about or are not quite implementing yet. So when you do talk about how to use teleconsulting, how do you help people understand how to best use it for them in their practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know if you're not constantly keeping up with all of the different state regulations and things that are happening in the world of telemedicine, it can get very confusing and can make you just say, like, I don't want to get in trouble. Like, I don't want any part of that. And so the best thing to understand about teleconsulting is that because it's vet to vet, you don't have to worry about how you establish your veterinary client patient relationship because you're not establishing one with the client and patient, and you don't have to be licensed in every state. So teleconsulting is a really great resource that has no barrier to usage for any veterinarian in the US we'll talk about. And so I think it's something that every vet clinic should sit down as a team and kind of just come up with a plan and think about the ways that it can impact their practice in a positive way. Because first of all, teleconsulting is a service that they can offer their patients just like anything else. Like if you get a new, laser machine for pain relief, or if you got a like dental x-ray or something, like anything that you're going to bring into your practice that improves your patient's health and improves the standard of care that you're providing, that's a service that you can offer to your clients. And that is a service that can build a revenue for your practice. And our hope is that this is a service that also will address some pain points in your practice and help you solve issues that you're running into. So if you're trying to refer cases and you're unable to, either because your clients can't or don't want to go, or because there's an 8-week wait time to see an oncologist, or you're too far away, or any of the reasons why traditional referral might not be an option for your clients, or if you have cases that you want to keep in-house and just want a little bit more support with, or want to feel like you're offering that as a service to your clients. So kind of coming up with ways that it could have a positive impact on your practice, and then build those things into your SOPs, build those things into your estimates, into your invoices that you're going to use. I mean, if you think about it, when you do a surgery, you've already built in, the anesthesia is not optional, right? You've already built in the anesthesia costs and everything that you're going to do for that patient that is related to that anesthesia and surgery prep. So why not add in getting a preoperative anesthesiologist consult as an option for your clients, or at least for your patients that are high risk? Or if you're going to already do a mass removal surgery, you've built that into your SOPs and your estimates of, I'm going to send this mass off for histopath. Okay, well, what about an onc consult as well? Or what about a pre-op surgical oncology consult to make sure that we've optimized our time under anesthesia, got the right margins, done what we need to do for that patient? So there's a lot of ways that we can sell that service to our clients, but it's also the best thing for our patients. And then also thinking about, your time is extremely valuable as the veterinarian. And so if you are already seeing 5 cases an hour and taking walk-ins and doing surgery at the same time, and like there's no way I can take 15 minutes out of my day for a phone call with a specialist, that's okay, because there's asynchronous consultation options, and you can train your staff to build that, or to take a good history from the client, submit that to the specialist, and get that case submitted. If you've got a new grad in your practice and you're wanting to help provide mentorship for that person, and you want to help that veterinarian grow into a confident, successful, independent, happy person working in your practice, one thing you can offer for that person in terms of mentorship is, in addition to just the other vets in the practice helping them out when they're busy too, give that veterinarian 30 minutes a couple days a week that are blocked off where they're not seeing new appointments, where they can utilize teleconsulting services and actually book one-on-one calls with a specialist. They're getting that mentorship from a specialist, they're getting help for their cases, and they're building revenue for your practice during that time, because you can charge that client for the time that that veterinarian is working for their pet. There's just a lot of opportunities. And then advertising that as a service too, like, hey, we not only offer dentistry and emergency surgery, but we also offer, virtual specialty consults. So there's just a lot of ways that practices can get ahead of what is coming, which is the expectation that teleconsulting is used in their practices.
Yeah, and to tie in a couple of those points, it is really not hard for me to remember being that new veterinarian in
Yeah.
practice. Like for some reason, that will forever be memorable. I started thinking about how probably maybe one of the earlier teleconsulting, options that we had was in radiology. So the clinic that I worked at for my internship, they had one of those, I guess, a subscription, something where we could submit our radiographs or x-rays, those things to a radiologist somewhere, and they would give us a reading of it. And it gave me that extra confidence that, okay, I have somebody in my corner who is a specialist and they're helping me. And so even if that's part of, to me, like that would have been a fantastic recruiting tool
Mhm.
to say that we have a platform, an Etsy like platform where you can go on and speak with specialists about your cases. Like again, that would have given me a lot of confidence. A lot of people talk about wanting mentorship when they're coming out of vet school. So it's a little different, right? But hey, I mean, that's a cool opportunity to have access to all the specialists you would need, and it helps you become more confident, not only because you do have somebody in your corner that you can go to, but also as you read their results you start to learn, you grow faster, I think, as a doctor. So that was just something that I was thinking about as you were talking.
Yeah, you're exactly right, because a lot of practices are already using teleradiology, and with like clinical pathology and diagnostics too, right? Like,
Mhm.
histopath. And so there is already a precedent of sending your results to a specialist and getting a report back. We've already incorporated that into our practice life. And so I think it is a really obvious next step to bring specialty consulting into that as well. The best thing about it is there's literally no overhead cost. There's no risk. It costs you nothing, right? It's just the cost of the consult, and then the client pays for that, so, with an upcharge for your time. So it is a really easy transition, I think, for practices to kind of bring that into the services that they offer.
Yeah. And I liked how you talked about already booking that charge into like certain packages. So, like with radiographs, we already built in that
Right.
consultation fee, right? So you're not having to itemize, and where they can pick it apart. When I was a resident, I loved working with orthopedic surgeons because when they got ruptured cruciates and they show up for surgery, they're like, this comes with a nutrition consult so that you can lose weight before we do surgery. So, I mean, they were fantastic to work with because they already put that consult into, their package, which again, back to what you said, it ultimately is best for the patient because you really are able to give them the full team
Right.
of, doctors to give them the best care and outcome.
Absolutely.
I love stories. And is there a particular instance where teleconsulting had a good outcome?
One thing that kind of comes to mind for me is, I had an opportunity after I left the practice that I was working at, where I had some clients that I had close relationships with, and I'd worked with their pet a long time, and then I left, and so we had one client that had Googled me, I guess, and had found Stratocyte and had called her vet and said, like, "Hey, I found Dr. Vitale, and I just I want her input on what's going on with my dog." And so they booked a consult with me. Usually it's just vet to vet, but since I knew her, like, she came on the call as well. And so, we were able to talk through, what was going on with her pet at the time. And I was, really touched that, like, I had enough of an impact on her life when she was my client, that she had moved to like a different state, Googled me, found me online, and like went through all that trouble to set up the virtual consult. But it was a really great experience because it kind of, proved that it was a good use for a case like that. And she got the information that she needed for the peace of mind for the decisions that she needed to make. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I like that ability for a second opinion too, being general practice and being able to offer a second opinion in the same clinic, right? I just think it's really nice. And nutrition, there's a lot of teleconsulting. So I'm pretty familiar with it from that perspective, especially in my residency. And sometimes it was when the general practitioner needed someone to back them up
Yeah.
on a call.
Yeah.
So even that sometimes is when you're in that situation where the owner's just not quite convinced, and they're like, you're like, well, we can do a specialist consult, and then just to get somebody to back you up on your decision, I think sometimes can be worth its weight in gold.
I'm sure. Yes. Yeah. Nutrition is one of the best examples of how to use teleconsulting. You guys have already got it figured out.
Well, part of it, yeah, yeah. We definitely are here to support because again, each specialist does believe in whatever specialty they've dedicated a lot of time to. So, we're passionate about it and we're really excited. Going back to your you like teaching example, most of us really, especially if we are actually in teleconsulting, we enjoy helping.
Yes.
We enjoy walking you through or walking with you through that case and thinking about options and interpreting things. So I, I really enjoy that. It's a lot of fun to work with colleagues.
Definitely. And you make friends too. And then you
Yeah.
meet up at BMX. And it's like, oh, I finally get to see you in person. How's so and so doing? Yeah. So it definitely is fun. And, reconnecting with former students who find you to do teleconsulting. It's a small profession, but it helps keep it small and close knit. So that's nice.
Kind of like a big little profession.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
we're connected. For helping people understand what the experience could be like specifically for Stratocyte, you started talking about the asynchronous, which is very nice because you're right. We're not always able to sit down for phone calls, even leveraging your technician to send a case to the specialist. But maybe they are interested in having that call with a specialist. What does it look like? Kind of
Yeah,
walk them through
great
what the
question.
experience would be.
Yeah, so on Stratocyte, if you do select to do an audio or video call, it's all built into the platform. So you don't have to worry about waiting for someone to hopefully call you at the time that they said they would on your personal cell or anything like that. When you log into your dashboard as either user type, you can pull up your case and see all of the case information that the primary care vet has put in. You can see any records that they've attached, images, anything like that. And you can also chat back and forth with them. There's a chat box on every appointment, whether you selected synchronous or asynchronous. If you do have a video or audio call scheduled, there is a little basically Zoom window. It's not Zoom, but it's a video window built into that platform. So you just start the call at the time the appointment's supposed to start, turn your video on, and you can chat back and forth just like you and I are doing now.
You have been able to work with a lot of different people in the profession, building Stratocyte, working with specialists, connecting with general practitioners over several years, especially during the pandemic. So, with that experience, with these relationships you felt with colleagues in the profession, what is something that you think about as maybe words of wisdom that you would like to give to people in our profession, maybe some challenges that you're seeing that you'd like to speak to?
One thing I would say is that, and this probably doesn't actually answer your question, but it's just what's coming to mind, is this profession is awesome. I have never appreciated this profession as much as I have now that I'm on the industry side. I meet new people almost every day. I have a random call with someone new. And not only has that been fun and a great way to make connections, but pretty much every single person that I have spoken to has been so helpful, even if I can give them nothing in return. Everyone has just gone out of their way to make introductions to other people or make suggestions or, hey, have you tried this? Or have you heard of this? Or, just gone out of their way to help a new company in the industry have its best chance of success. And that is just so cool to me. I can't wait to pay that forward in any opportunity that I get, right? I guess the thing that I would say I've learned the most doing this so far is that every single one of us is going to face challenges or roadblocks in our career, or is going to look for maybe, okay, I need to pivot a little bit on what I'm doing. Or if you feel kind of like burnt out or challenged or discouraged, like this profession is here for you. Somebody has a new business that's starting up that needs somebody with a fresh set of eyes to come on their team, or somebody has met somebody who's met somebody who will help you find your way in, you know, a certain niche of the profession or something. Like there is always a way to find the light. There's friends to be had. It's a really great group of people to be a part of.
I 100% agree. You're speaking to why doing Vet Life Reimagined is so amazing to me, because it does remind me over and over again exactly what you said, how amazing this profession is, how amazing the people in this profession are, how helpful, encouraging, and yes, it keeps me going. So I can definitely relate to that. So I'm so glad that you have found that position as
Yes.
well. And I know you are already giving back. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for connecting the industry, this profession. So, because that's how I see it. So thank you very much for what you do.
Yes, you too.
Thank you. All right. Well, I have a kind of like a final four questions for you.
Okay.
And the first one sometimes stumps people, but is there anything that people may get wrong about you?
Well, yeah, luckily I've listened to a couple of the other podcasts, or that would have stumped me. It's just something kind of funny. People that don't know me that find out that I've started a tech company just assume that I have a tech background, or like I'm a software engineer, like that I know how to use the computer like in any basic capacity, and I do not. um, like I had barely mastered Gmail before starting this company. I'm learning a little bit as I go, but people just assume that you have a tech background. And if you have a problem with the internet, do not call me. That's all I have to say.
This, you have a team. You
I have a team.
you hire those
Yes,
people.
I will ask my team. Yes.
That's a very good answer. Thank you. The second one is, do you have anything on your bucket list that you would like to do?
I would love to do a Mediterranean cruise. Really want to go to Croatia, really want to go to Greece, really want to go to Spain, then to Italy, want to go back, want to eat all of the food that they have in Italy. Again, excellent food. But yeah, I just want to like eat my way through the Mediterranean.
That sounds fantastic. And just think this is really cool. You are very big into CrossFit.
Oh yeah,
So
CrossFit.
yeah, I want to give you like a you don't have to use this as your hidden skill or interest. When did you get into CrossFit?
Um, I I really wanted to start it during my residency, but they don't really pay you during your residency, and CrossFit's kind of expensive. So I did a little bit of CrossFit like on my weekends off and stuff. So I probably started in 2019 or something, when the first time when I was studying for my first set of boards, because we do boards at the end of our second year and the end of our third year. I took like the training class and then did like a little bit. And then as soon as my residency was over, I got really into it. And now I go 5 days a week. I'm addicted. It is literally my favorite thing in the world. I just went to the CrossFit Games and watched that, if you know what that is, in Madison this year. And it was like the best experience ever. It was so inspirational. I love watching it. I love reading about it. I love listening to podcasts about it. I love doing it. I'm obsessed. I'm a fan.
Very cool. How is it inspirational for you?
Oh man. So I'm terrible at it. First of all, let me just be extremely clear. I have zero natural athletic ability. So every single day I get an opportunity to test myself and challenge myself and accomplish something I've never done before. So that is amazing. I love that I'm terrible at it, because I watch all my friends do amazing things and I think I'll never be able to do that. And then later on I do it, right? And so every single day you get to challenge yourself and you get to test yourself. And the best part is, if you fail, nobody gets hurt, right? It doesn't really matter. You just try again the next day, you try harder, right? So I absolutely love it. And you're surrounded by great people. It's a really positive community. Like everybody's always cheering for you. Like we could do a 3-hour long podcast episode on why I love CrossFit, but I will not do that to your listeners.
And my last question is, what is something you are grateful for?
Definitely my support system. My parents growing up were extremely supportive, and I never would have made it where I am in my life professionally without them. And then my husband is just like the ultimate MVP. He makes amazing food. He's a great cook. And he's also just been so supportive of Stratocyte and its possibility. And I could not have done any of this without him. He's just the absolute best. So shout out to my husband.